Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Marvel Crisis Protocol character spotlight. Today, we are taking a look at Bullseye, Benjamin Poindexter himself. So, this is the second two threat we're doing in the series, and Bullseye is known as kind of being the consistency model. So, he's a really good two threat. I mean, most two threats are kind of considered good just by virtue of being a two, but Bullseye is really, really good because of the things that he's actually capable of doing. So yeah, we're gonna just go ahead and break down what he does and why he's considered one of, if not the most consistent model in the game. So first of all, looking at his defensive stats here, as we already mentioned, he is a two threat. He's got 3-3-2 for his defenses, so a little light on the Mystic, and he's got a 4 stamina, so he does just kind of melt. None of these stats are particularly impressive. He's size 2 with a medium move, so all pretty standard there. For a two threat, I don't think that's super far from the norm defensively, but he will just melt, so keep that in mind. He's got a throwing knife. It's a range 4 dice attack. It's a gainer, so he does just gain 1 power whether it does any damage or not. The defending character does not benefit from cover, and it has a wild bleed, so that's a randomly useful condition. Can be good when it comes up. He has a spender. It's a 4-cost spender, which for a 2 threat is a little expensive, but that's all right. It's going to be a range 4 as well, so all of his kit operates at range 4. It's throwing 5 dice, so a little bit harder, although for a 4-cost attack, that's still not very many dice. However, the defending character still does not benefit from cover, and it automatically will give them the bleed special condition, so he's got a more consistent way of handing out bleed there. But then he also has rapid fire, and this is rapid fire without any like symbols to trigger it, so you don't even need a hit for this one. And as anyone who has used rapid fire before knows, after the attack is resolved, this character can just make an additional pincushion attack without paying its power cost. So basically, this 4-cost attack is going to let him make 2 5 dice attacks that ignore cover. So not bad at all. It's a little expensive, but considering the fact that it means you're basically getting to make this attack twice, and he is just a 2 threat, that's not bad. He has 3 superpowers on his card. He's got Hit and Run. This one costs him 2. It's an action, but he immediately gets to make an attack action followed by a move action. It can only be used once per turn. This is useful. He can kind of play that kind of hit and run skirmish tactic. You know, he can move up, shoot something, and move back, or he can, double tap something if he's already in range and then back up to safety or move to an objective or something like that. So that can be pretty good. And of course, because he has a gainer, it means the second attack will almost always be able to use hit and run unless you use one of your other abilities. And his next ability is why he is considered such a consistent model. On top of stuff like the automatic bleed and free rapid fire and ignoring cover, he has I Never Miss. This is a 1-cost superpower. After an attack made by this character is resolved, if no damage was dealt as a result of that attack, this character may use the superpower. The target character suffers 1 damage. So this is really nice because when you're making an attack, you get to pick the way the timing on this works. So throwing knife will gain you 1 power. That is also an after the attack is resolved effect, so you can choose the ordering on these. So if you don't have any power, you can choose to gain 1 power and then spend that power that you gain on I Never Miss to make sure you deal at least 1 damage. So in other words, even if he is poisoned and stunned and anything like that, so he has 0 power going into the turn, if he is within range 4 of a target, he's going to be able to do 2 damage to them. That's pretty much a guarantee. So that's really, really good. He could potentially do more. Those 4 dice attacks could spike and end up doing a little bit more. But even if they completely whiff, he can get 2 damage through no matter what. So that's really, really useful. Another fun thing about that is that doesn't trigger things like aggressive, which is based on damage from an attack. So aggressive wouldn't trigger on I Never Miss because that's not actually a part of the attack. That is a superpower dealing damage. So fun little extra thing that's kind of worth acknowledging once in a while. Of course, that doesn't really work if you just do damage on the attack anyway, so don't necessarily rely on it because you can't guarantee that you're not going to roll well on the attack, but is worth acknowledging there that it's an extra little thing he can kind of play with. The last ability on his card here is his kind of defensive ability here. So the one thing that can help him stay alive if he doesn't get one shot, it's Parting Shot. It's a 2-power reactive superpower. After an attack targeting him is resolved, he may use this superpower. The attacking character suffers 1 damage, and then he may advance away from the attacking character small. So even with his very poor defensive stats, odds are he still doesn't get one shot most of the time, so he still will get to do this, and it makes it really annoying for your opponent trying to double tap him, and it can also make it really, really risky. If your opponent's model is down to 1 health, obviously the Parting Shot could kill them, so it can be a bit of a deterrent just as much as anything else. So that's a really, really solid ability for him to have. And yeah, there's not much more to say about it than that. It's a solid defensive ability that can really help, mostly serve as a deterrent, I think, if anything, but also just avoiding double taps because odds are he still lives at least one attack if it's not like a spender or something. And if they're dropping a spender on your 2 threat, you're probably for the most part okay with this. One thing that's important about Parting Shot is do keep in mind the timing on this. It is after an attack is resolved, so if your opponent has something like Rapid Fire, I don't know, maybe it's another Bullseye, there after the attack is resolved will go first, just because the attackers after the attackers things in general go before yours, that share a timing. So just worth keeping in mind that stuff like that will still work in that way. But in your favor is something like if their thing gives them an advance, they can get as close to you as you want as they want, but you're still going to get to do a small move afterwards. So if they're exclusively operating at range 2 or something like that, you're going to be able to get out of the range 2 either way. So that can kind of work both for and against you depending on the scenario. Taking a look at Bullseye's flip side here, nothing really changes. I don't think actually anything changes. So yeah, he just gets different art. He's a little more aggressive in this one, whereas here he's just kind of standing there in the dark. But no real actual stat changes or anything like that. Next, we're going to take a look at the affiliations he's a part of. So he doesn't actually have any tactic cards available to him, but he is a part of 2 affiliations. So let's go over those real quick. The first one is Cabal. So he's actually one of 2 threats available in Cabal, one of the few affiliations that has access to more than one, and of course the other being Bob. So that can be fun. You can go super wide with something like that. The affiliations he has access to are, or the leaderships he has access to in Cabal are Malekith, Red Skull 1, Red Skull 3, and Sin. So I guess we'll kind of just go through them one by one. So starting out with Malekith's. Malekith is when this character or an allied character dazes or KOs an enemy character, you're going to get to choose one of your other allied characters. They're going to get to remove damage, gain a power, and advance small. This isn't terrible for Bullseye because he does just do a little bit of plink here and there. He can be very, very good at finishing kills. Like I said, he's almost 2 guaranteed damage. Again, tactics cards and weird tech aside. Um, so that can be really, really good for just kind of helping your other models get kills more consistently, or he can finish kills and trigger the leadership for your other models, which is really, really good because free small advances on big monster models like Malekith is pretty solid. So yeah, he's pretty solid there. I don't mind him at all, and I think being able to kind of pair a 2 threat with a 7 threat helps balance out the 7 threat, so you can still go a little bit wider with a squad like that. Looking at Red Skull 1, it's each time an allied character damages an enemy character with an attack, they gain 1 power. Unfortunately, I don't think this one is amazing for Bullseye because, as previously stated, the superpower that makes him do the 1 damage is not part of the attack, so he wouldn't gain the extra power for doing that. It's not the worst thing in the world for him. It can help him get up to his spender more often if he is occasionally spiking those damage rolls and getting at least 1 or 2 damage on his own, but it's not the greatest. It's not going to help him all that much, and he really doesn't need all that much power for doing the things that he really wants to do. Red Skull 3, on the other hand, I think is a little bit better with him. Basically, the reality gem on a stick, so he can treat a skull as a crit, and then after the attack is resolved, the attacking character loses 1 power, but if they don't have power to lose, they take a damage instead. I think this can be really good with him because you'll kind of know when you're rolling your dice, if it's looking like a good attack roll or a bad attack roll, especially if you were to, treat a skull as a crit. So you can kind of make an educated decision on whether or not you're going to want to treat a skull as a crit, or if you're going to want to, hold the power to make the I never miss attack. You can also kind of do the weird world where you try to do both, where you treat the skull as a crit, but then their defense roll ends up being really, really good. Because do note that the timing on this has been errated, so that way it has to be before the explode criticals. So their defense roll ends up being really good, and suddenly they're still blocking everything. But because it's after the attack is resolved again, you can choose the ordering of when you gain, when you do I never miss, and when this triggers. So if you had 0 power going into the attack, you can gain 1, do the I never miss to still do 1 damage, and then just take a damage on Bullseye. Or you could, skip the I never miss and just pay the power. But either way, you'll have the choice there, so it's not terrible in that regard. I still don't think it's particularly amazing for him, but it's certainly not bad. Last one here is Sin, and I don't know if there's really too much to say for this one. Um, I don't think it's particularly amazing for Bullseye. I mean, he doesn't tend to be the model who's going to be getting up close and personal with your opponents, whether that's standing on objectives that they're contesting or just being close to ones holding objectives. That's not really his game. He operates mostly at range 4, so I don't think he's going to be getting super crazy amounts of value out of Sin's leadership here. As far as other affiliated models go, there are a couple of small synergies here and there. Stuff like, for example, Scourge, who gets benefits when he targets bleeding characters. That's not bad because Bullseye does hand out bleed very consistently with his spender, but also if he's able to double tap with his builder, that has pretty decent odds. And I mean, if you're getting 2 damage off of the builder, or gainer rather, from Bullseye, and then you're going into that target with the Executioner. I mean, they have to be a pretty bulky target to not take or not go down to something like that because yeah, that's a pretty good combo. Other models, I can't really think of anything super specific with many of the other options here. He's a very good kind of independent splash piece that'll kind of work on his own for the most part, at least. The other place he's affiliated is, of course, Criminal Syndicate. And yeah, we'll just kind of go through the leaders here as well really quickly. So Kingpin, I don't think he's bad under Kingpin by any means. Counting as 2 healthy characters is nice because even though he's not going to be going over to your opponent's objectives all that often, he does have a couple things that can be kind of obnoxious. If he's just sitting on a back point, it still means your opponent has to actually take him down to claim that point from you, or put more models there because he counts as 2, so they can't just double move someone and be like, we're tying your back point. So that's not bad. But that's just kind of anyone under Kingpin's leadership. More so, I think you can kind of play around with the parting shot ability and being healthy. So if you survive the attack, which obviously is a really important component of that, getting that short advance can really screw over your opponent's game plan by, instead of maybe running away, maybe this is already their second attack of the turn or something like that. Now, all of a sudden, you've put Bullseye on a point that they were going to be getting before, but he's counting as 2 healthy characters. So not only are they no longer getting it, but now you're getting it instead. So there's some pretty cool, obnoxious things you can do with that. That said, he's not really the type of character that Kingpin absolutely loves. I think he's more of just a pretty solid kind of 2-threat filler if you're looking for a 2-threat to round out the list. So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily his game plan, but I don't think he's bad there either. Claw's leadership, I don't know if it's really a leadership, but when an ally character is dazed or KO'd, he gets to move. Um, Bullseye is squishy, so I guess he'll get dazed or KO'd semi often, and Claw will get to move. Honestly, I don't think it's a particularly great synergy, but I also just don't think it's particularly leadership like leadership. So yeah, I don't have much to say on this one. Modoc certainly isn't a bad leadership for him. Being able to push wilds on both defense and attack to being hits or shields is pretty solid. So yeah, I mean it helps with his consistency even more, I guess, especially on the defensive side. It's not crazy good odds that you're going to be getting that wild because you are most of the time throwing either 4 or 3 dice on defense. So you're not doing anything too crazy with that, but I don't think it's bad for him by any means. It definitely helps his consistency, which is kind of his entire game to begin with. In a similar vein, we also have Shadowland Daredevil. So when he's targeting people holding or contesting, he can reroll one of his attack dice. That's not bad at all. The ability to reroll skulls is also nice. That'll help him get those wild bleeds on the initial builders. Might save him a little bit of power here and there so he can get up to spenders and hit and runs more often. So Yeah, I actually think probably out of all the Criminal Syndicate leaderships, this might be his favorite one, which is a little ironic because it's under Daredevil, but is what it is. Otherwise, just looking at the rest of Criminal Syndicate here, I don't think there's many models here that synergize with him too specifically. Again, he's a very kind of self-sufficient model. He's going to do his own thing, and yeah, that's kind of all he needs to do. So yeah, he's not looking for specific synergies with most of these models, really. Going into affiliations, I think he's generally going to play better towards a more attrition focused team. So obviously there's going to be some kind of natural synergy there with just like stuff that likes killing stuff because he likes killing stuff. I don't hate him in somewhat like Black Order just to kind of finish off any kills or soften up targets for Corvus and Proxima or something like that. He's not necessarily bad there. I don't think he's necessarily amazing either. He can be pretty good for something like Shield when they're doing kind of a death by a thousand paper cuts sort of route. You can get some cool stuff there where Bullseye's going to do an automatic 2 damage, and then Bucky's going to come in with all of his rapid fires, and we're going to have Fury Senior and Fury Junior and the grunts, and we're just going to throw a bunch of like kind of pea shooter attacks at you and get a bunch of plink in this way. He can be a really good way of just kind of adding more consistent plink to that. He's also got the rapid fire on the spender and stuff like that. So he can be really, really cool under shield for that reason. So I don't mind him there at all. I think he's pretty solid if you're splashing a 2 threat there. But in general, he's a very, very kind of self-sufficient model as we mentioned a few times. So he can kind of splash anywhere. Even something like Guardians, I don't think you're giving him a winging it token all that often, but he's a solid model and could work okay there. If they didn't already have affiliated 2 threats, and being the only other affiliation with more than one, I think he would be interesting there. But more so, I think you can kind of take advantage of him most in places like Shield or places where you're going to really get a lot more value out of the bleed. I could see some interesting things in, for example, Hydra with Strucker if you're running more of a condition team. Or Midnight Suns, obviously, he synergizes with Blade a little bit there with handing out the bleeds, and that'll help heal Blade up, keep him powered up, and then also make that spender really, really effective for him. So there's a few interesting things like that, but I don't think he's really relying too much on any specific leaderships or anything like that. I guess honorable mentions, just on the kind of sake of consistency, go to stuff like Miles Morales and Web Warriors, giving him rerolls on defense. Black Panther and Wakanda, or actually going back to Shield with Iron Man, giving him rerolls there as well, and any other leadership that's kind of focused around that sort of thing, especially rerolls that you're allowed to use on defense. I think he can get a little bit of value out of those. I don't think power leaderships are necessarily his favorite thing, although he doesn't absolutely hate them. Being able to use that rapid fire attack more often, giving you, consistently as much as 4 consistent damage in a turn can be really obnoxious. But that requires what? It's a 4 cost spender, and then let's assume you don't do any actual damage, so you're using, well, you need to do actual damage to get 4. So, it's not amazing, but it's still something you can do if you want to pump power into them. But in that case, I'd kind of avoid ones where you actually have to pick which models are getting the power pump their way. I wouldn't be going for something like Inhumans where you really don't want to be funneling all your power towards a 2 threat. But maybe something like, I don't know, Red Skull 2 and Hydra, where you're just going to passively get more power, isn't terrible. So, Emma Frost, that sort of thing. So those places wouldn't be too bad for him. But yeah, I think there's not too much to say. Obviously, he is a 2 threat, so he doesn't have as much going on. I mean, out of all the 2 threats, he does have a lot of text on his card, and there is a lot of things that he does. He's a really powerful model and can do a lot of great things. But he doesn't really have much that he's relying on. He's a very self-sufficient model. He doesn't rely on having specific synergies or anything like that all too often. So it's kind of hard to kind of be like, well, this model pairs really good with him, and this model, and this model. And maybe I missed some. If I did, please do let me know down below what you guys think. If there's places where you think he does exceptionally well, or models that he benefits in a big way that I missed or just didn't mention here, I'd be very curious to see what you guys think. But for the most part, I think that is going to do it for this character spotlight. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please do drop a like down below. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We do character spotlights like these every Wednesday and battle reports on Sundays. So if you're a fan of either of those things, feel free to join us. And Yeah, as I mentioned, do let me know down below what you guys think. I think Bullseye is a really, really good two threat. I think he's playable pretty much anywhere. You can't really go wrong choosing Bullseye as your two threat splash, especially if you're going for a more attrition focused plan. Because obviously he can just kind of help push out very, very consistent damage, and that's just a good thing. But yeah, I think that is pretty much all I have to say on the character. This one's definitely a little shorter because, as I mentioned, there's not much in the way of kind of specific synergies that he's relying on. Very self-sufficient model, and yeah, you can kind of just slot him in anywhere. He's relatively plug and play, but there is some kind of nuance to the timings on some of his things and stuff like that. So, and of course, knowing who to target with him. Obviously, going into something like, for example, Beta Ray Bill, not his best target. Even the I Never Miss Beta Ray build can actually negate that damage down to 0, so not amazing. Although, can be a good way to just kind of make him make that choice of, do you want to take more damage here or do you want to waste your power? That's kind of up to you. So, giving choices to your opponent is not always the best thing, but also not always the worst thing. So there can be some interesting situations like that. And yeah, he's a really good model at the end of the day. There's just only kind of so much you can actually talk about what he does. So yeah, I think but I hope I did him justice. I've played him a handful of times now, and he is a really fun model. So I do recommend, if you haven't gotten a chance to, try him out at some point because he's pretty good. I think he's probably one of the most splashable two threats in the game. He's one of the ones that I'd be kind of happy to run pretty much anywhere. I'm not gonna complain about them. Whereas some of them I think are best in their own affiliations or in very specific places. So yeah, but that is gonna do it for this character spotlight. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and until next time, have a great day, everybody. Peace.